I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. And we'll start with a roll call for our members. Jessica Frazier.
I haven't heard.
Angelica Cogliano. Andrew Greenwood. Karina Haynes.
Present.
Megan Rommel.
Present.
Michelle Paulson.
Present.
Kelly Wouters.
Present.
And Dion Kristoff.
Present.
All right, due to a scheduling conflict, Jessica Frazier and Angelica Cogliano are unable to attend the meeting. Is there a motion to excuse the two members?
So can we actually hold off on that?
Sure.
Because it may just be that they're signing in late. I haven't heard anything specifically, so we should probably just wait. And we'll just mark them absent. If they come into the meeting, we can mark them present when they arrive.
Okay, so no motion.
No.
Okay. Our next agenda item is to review and adopt the minutes from the October 24th, 2024 meeting. Are there any comments, corrections? All right, is there a motion to approve the minutes as drafted?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
And the motion carries. We'll move on to agenda item 3, which is an administrative update, including the number of licenses issued and renewed. Rodney?
Good morning, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Great. We took a licensing data from January 13th to produce the following data report. Slide 2 covers the total standing of 1,315 licensees, covers 5 different license types: non-interpreting, provisional, regular, uncommon, forensic analysis, and temporary. The de minimis, also known as non-interpreting, covers 3 different disciplines. All 241 are not expected to renew, upgrade, or expire until November 17, 2026. Provisional licensees stand at the number 8, covering 5 different disciplines. All 8 of these will not be expected to upgrade or expire until the year 2025, covering several different months. Because this is a provisional license, it's not eligible to renew. It has to either upgrade or expire. Our biggest bulk of the licensee total is from our regular analyst and technician licensees. They cover 29 different disciplines, discipline combinations. If you'll review the sections of pages 5, 6, 7, and 8, you'll see the different categories. Unless you just want me to read all that. Thank you. Our renewed licensees that are eligible to renew for the rest of this year for the next term is 257. One update since this was made, all 4 for January have already renewed, so we're looking at the rest for February to December. 36 are identified as inactive and undesignated, but they're still eligible to renew. These are licensees that are no longer associated with a laboratory, but if they return to a accredited laboratory, they'll be eligible to renew. So they're kind of outside the scope that they'll be included if they begin any appointment with a lab. One of the new reports that the database team has made available to us, thank goodness, is this is one that shows us what we renewed by type, covering the fiscal year 2024, with 4 different types of licenses. And breaking it down even further would be fiscal year 24 by quarter. Another license type is the uncommon forensic analysis licensees. Only have 3. 2 are expected to renew or expire by May 2025. The other one is expected to renew or expire by December 2026. And our final licensee type is temporary. We have 4. One is expected to renew or expire on March 2027, another one May 2027, and 2 by October 2027. Any questions about anything I presented?
I don't have a question, but I just want to thank you for the thorough report here that you've given us, and I love the addition of the renewals. One thing that I've noticed is that there have been a lot of new licensees that you've been working through, and we have coursework requests today that kind of reflect those applications. It would be a nice metric, I think, for us to add to the slides, just to show each quarter how many new licensees that we've had.
Okay, up to date from,
Thank you.
from January 4th.
Yes.
Cool, we do that. Cool, thank you.
Yeah, that'd be helpful because we could see the volume. I think we have them kind of in groups, like the lab brings in a bunch of new people in a discipline and you see sort of waves of volume and new licenses. When DPS hires a lot of people, we know it. Put it that way.
And I know I'm creating problems because 2 of my technicians who just were getting licensed just promoted, so now it's like a confusion of changing license. Yes, thank you for your work on that. Thank you, Rodney.
I wanted to, before we talk about Alice, I wanted to introduce, and I should have done this before Rodney gave his presentation, but we have a new commission coordinator, Chelsea Estes, who's with us to help with everything that the lawyers can't do or don't do, which is a lot of things. So Chelsea has tremendous experience in management, in complex corporate environment, including budgets and all sorts of things. So she will be reaching out to you for things like making sure you get reimbursed, that you have everything you need, and lots of logistics. She also helps us build the board book, which you always access through Govenda and lots of other things like that. And she'll be helping with training and education, particularly some DNA stuff we have coming up that we're about to announce. So we're excited to have Chelsea on board, and if you ever need anything or you need to talk to one of us and I'm traveling or whatever and you can't get one of us, she can find us for sure. So Chelsea's a great resource for you, and I encourage you to use her, ask questions, she'll get you what you need. And then, Lee, did you want to talk to them about what's going on with the Alice program? And I think we talked a little bit about it last meeting, but we're moving away from Top Class and going to a new software platform. So Lee's been working on that very diligently with the software folks.
Yeah, the licensing staff has been working on transitioning from Top Class to this program we refer to as Alice. We hope that it's going to be more of an intuitive application system, whereas Top Class is kind of an LMS that we've created into an application system. So we're hoping it'll be great, and it's going to be integrated with all the other licensing programs in the Office of Court Administration. So that's another good thing. We have been making progress. We have a project manager with the Office of Court Administration that's very diligent. One of the programmers that was working for the software company quit, so we had to kind of start over. So we've had a little bit of a delay because of the holidays and that. So we're expecting, we hope, we haven't got a timeline yet, but we're hoping by the summer that we can launch this new program for everybody, so that next heavy renewal cycle we'll have everybody on the new platform.
And it is a software program specifically designed to help with applications for various government agency functions. So certification, licensure, all kinds of things. The Judicial Branch Certification Commission, which already uses this platform, they certify or license, recognize in some form or fashion through credentialing guardians, court reporters, court interpreters, and process servers. And they have thousands of people. Did I say guardians? Did I say guardians? Yeah. Thousands of people in that system. So we're excited about it. We think it'll be a much better experience for the user. I think that's it for admin. Lee, do you have anything else?
I don't think so.
All right, thanks for the updates. Next, we'll review any outstanding coursework evaluations, and we have 4 of those today.
If that's okay with you all, I'll go through each of these just with a brief summary. And I got significant help and input from our expert Megan Rummel on 3 of the candidates because they're, of course, forensic biology DNA analysts category of licensure applicants. And they're missing some of the components that, if you all recall, we require the 2011 QAS requirements. Require any applicant for a license. They may be different from the laboratory's hiring requirements, but those requirements include having a biochemistry course, a molecular biology course, sorry, my Zoom kicked off for a second, genetics and did I say biochemistry already? And those courses must be comprised of at least 9 hours at a minimum. So we're looking, when we evaluate these, we're looking to see if their coursework covers that. And so candidate 1 is missing both biochemistry and molecular biology. And Megan has graciously evaluated the coursework from this candidate. They put forth an Intro to Bio 1 course, an Intro to Bio 2, and then a Chem 222 course. None of them meet the minimum requirements. The Intro to Bio 1 might count for biochemistry, I believe, but the Bio 2 does not meet either, and the Chem 2 would not meet the molecular biology if we're already counting the first course. And Megan, please just correct me if I'm wrong. Did you have any other input on that one?
Just that part of the assessment under the 2011 QAS discussed having that subject area need to be an integral component of the course. So it couldn't just be 1 week of lectures on molecular biology in a, for instance, microbiology course to count. So that's how these courses were assessed. Generally, integral component at that point when we were under the 2011 was assessing somewhere between 40 to 50% of the course should represent that material. And for this candidate in particular, we thought that Intro to Bio 1 would potentially meet the integral component requirement for biochemistry, but neither of the other 2 represented molecular biology. Was what I think the majority of technical leaders and assessors might feel. I did acknowledge, obviously, this is an area where there's a lot of disagreement in audits that happen, findings and then sustained findings and overturned findings. So there are disagreements and somebody might disagree with that assessment, but I feel like that's where the majority might fall on this candidate.
We have another slightly complicating factor, which is that the QAS has been revised. They revise it periodically. Not always do they focus on any sort of extensive revisions to the coursework components of the QAS, but they do have a new one coming out in July of 2025. So I think we need to put on the agenda for next time a conversation about whether the rules should be updated to reflect the QAS education changes. But I don't, well, number 1, it's not effective till July 1. And number two, it's not what's in our rules right now. What's in our rules right now is the 2011 version. So, thank you for looking at all of that, Megan.
And that could definitely be something that we discuss. I think we should talk about putting it on the agenda to add any admin rules to be the current version, whatever that might be as time progresses.
We can talk about it next time, how that has to work.
Sure,
Because administrative rulemaking is a peculiar
I'm sure it
beast.
is.
Nina will tell you, but we'll talk about what our options are at the next meeting.
My only suggestion, because what you communicated to me was trying to align with what the CODIS labs would accept, and they have to change with the time, so that was the only thought.
So I think for this one, in light of that evaluation, does anyone have any questions for Megan about it? Or, because what will happen from here is we will communicate the LAC's decision back to the lab and tell them what's missing so that they can go from there with it.
I don't think we need to take a motion on this one because we're not recommending to approve it. The second candidate here is asking us to evaluate their, is it geometry statistics course? And Megan looked at this for us as well and felt like the core components that are in that statistics guidance document that we publish fulfill the requirements of our basic stats course. Is there any discussion on that one?
Go statistics, that's what it's.
And I believe it was geography, not
Geography.
geometry, but yes.
If you all approve that, we'll need to take a motion to recommend the commission approve the candidate's coursework as equivalent to the 3-semester credit hour stats course that we require.
Okay, so is there a motion for the commission to approve the candidate's coursework as equivalent to a 3-semester credit hour college level statistics course?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries.
Can we pause for 1 second? Number one, I wanted to check and see if we have any more folks. Our lawyers have joined. We do not see the lawyers. Okay, I just wanted to check in on attendance. We think over here, the lawyers to your right think that it would actually be better, Vina, to take a motion on candidate 1 that basically declines the request to approve her coursework and explains to her what she is missing and what her options are essentially. So I think that's safer to actually take action for the record.
Okay, so for candidate 1, is there a motion to decline the candidate's coursework as meeting minimum requirements for forensic biology, DNA, analyst licensure?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries. We'll look at candidate 3 now.
On candidate 3, this candidate is missing just the molecular biology component that's required. Based on what's been provided by the candidate, they have a microbiology course and lab. They weren't able to get the syllabus for the microbiology course, but you can kind of see what the content is from the lab syllabus. They also have a cell biology course as well. It doesn't indicate though that they covered any of the main molecular biology topics that we would be looking for in a molecular biology course. They do indicate that they read a book on molecular cell biology, but we don't know which chapters of the book or which content, I did pose the question to the lab manager and the candidate, whether they could tell us, how much molecular cell biology they took out of that book, but as of right now, I'm not sure that we have enough to approve.
When we were looking at this, I asked Lee to go back and check into other examples of cell biology coming up as one of the things that people want to have counted. And actually we found a prior example so I don't know if anyone told you that this was going to be part of the gig when you signed up for the LAC, but each subject matter expert, we really rely pretty heavily on y'all to tell us, is this enough? Is this the right coursework? And it falls pretty heavily on DNA, I think, because of the interface with QAS. But the good news is y'all are used to doing that. You do it all the time. So Aaron Reed was sitting in your spot previously, and we actually found an email interaction with him on cell biology where he did essentially the same thing you're doing, which is he looked at it and said, it's not enough based on what I'm looking at here. So I don't think this is an uncommon request. It just seems to fall short. And I don't know if in all circumstances, but at least we've seen it. Because I was saying to Lee, we need to be consistent in how we evaluate these. So let's go look and see. And he had said no.
Yeah, cell biology is quite often submitted to us for applicants as meeting molecular biology, and we have to look very closely at the documentation they provide because some do cover those central dogma, replication, transcription, translation, genetic expression, and some absolutely do not. They focus more on the organelles and cell transport across membranes. So yeah, unfortunately, this one I felt like did not cover that molecular biology material.
I wonder if the universities, maybe, I feel like we should put out some sort of PSA, if you're going to do a cell biology course, and certainly if you're going to advertise it to forensic biologists, students who are seeking that career path, your syllabus should be adequate to reflect what is needed for the QAS. I don't know if they do those kinds of evaluations, but.
We definitely have seen people who weren't planning on going into forensics, so it's understandable that they might not have those. But we have seen even graduate programs with masters who don't offer molecular biology and setting their students up for effectively failure and not being able to be hired as a DNA analyst because they didn't get those core QAS classes. So maybe that is something we can work on is trying to, at least with the Texas universities, advising how to formulate QAS classes that would meet the requirements and not cause the strife and disagreement among TLs for hiring because they have to align with these very strict rules.
Yeah.
Because we definitely lose good candidates, smart people because of that.
And unless they want to take a different molecular biology class, but most people don't want to go back to school after they've already.
Depends how much you want to be, because
Yeah.
definitely people have.
Yeah, okay. All right, so I think then it sounds like for this one, we would need a recommendation, a motion to recommend that the commission not approve this coursework.
Okay, so is there a motion to recommend that the commission not approve the candidate's coursework as meeting the minimum requirements for the forensic biology DNA analyst licensure?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion carries. Go to our last candidate.
The final candidate here is also a forensic biology DNA analyst, potential candidate, and they're asking us to count a molecular genetics course in fulfillment of the molecular biology component. And we think the molecular genetics course covers a significant enough amount of the components, so we'd be looking for a molecular biology course. Megan evaluated this for us as well and gave me input.
Yes, so this one I felt like it covered an integral component of the course as well as hitting those topics that are required for molecular biology. Some of the ones that weren't completely listed out in the syllabus are covered in some of their other courses that they have. So I think in this case, you see PCR, you see sequencing, you see prokaryotic, eukaryotic structure and function, some genetic regulation. So I think we would be safe in approving this course for molecular biology.
Thank you. I think we'll need a recommendation that the commission approve the candidate's coursework request.
Okay, so is there a motion to recommend the commission approve the candidate's coursework as meeting the minimum requirements for forensic biology, DNA analyst licensure?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion carries. We'll go on to the next agenda item, which is to review any outstanding criminal history evaluations and or other licensee conduct requests from licensing applicants.
We don't have any of these type of reviews this quarter.
Great, thank you.
Sorry, I think the battery, I don't think the thing's on. No, my laptop, I was just gonna check the, I plugged it in, but the switch is off. Sorry.
Oh, wait just a minute. Okay, next we'll hear an update on the development of a guidance document for intra and interagency proficiency monitoring programs and standard operating procedures, including a discussion and update on the collaboration with the Texas Division of International Association for Certification, or TDIAI, and the hosting of a licensing exam at TDIAI's annual conference, which is set for June 10th through the 14th, 2025 in Leeds City, Texas. Michelle.
Do I just go for it? Okay. Lots of exciting brainstorming, collaboration, document that's on me. I'll hopefully have something for the next meeting for us all to review. When it comes to the TDII conference coming up, I unfortunately realized that I'm gonna be out of the state the day of the conference. Chelly Rossi has agreed to teach a course. And basically through a few phone calls and brainstorming, topics will include kind of the licensing, the commission itself, what you all do, how that can help the department. It's gonna outline the voluntary licensing, all the requirements for the individual requirements, and then all the forensic service provider requirements. I think a lot of people that don't currently have SOPs or have some, they see those requirements and it's a little daunting or a little intimidating. So what we had discussed was she will have the slides with all the requirements, and then we would additionally add on examples from my SOPs, her SOPs, maybe Houston's because they're online, and examples of what that actually looks like so people can have something a little more visual to wrap their head around and what the requirements actually look like in practice. And so talk about that. And then after the course, an hour and a half, maybe have breakout sessions for each voluntary license so they can talk to somebody with the reconstruction course, somebody with the crime scene licenses, somebody with latent prints, and have actual breakout discussions about what the licensing requirements mean, what they need to do, just so this way it's a little more clear and a little more real what it all means. And then separate from that, also a pilot proficiency monitoring there. Shelley might be able to explain it better because a lot of it is really good coming from her brain. Basically putting out a large crime scene, for example, having a room, putting it out there, and having kind of, instead of making multiple scenes, multiple proficiency monitoring, just have one big one. And then you would have your checklist per se that has all the different elements of crime scene, whether photography, evidence collection, recognition, processing, and the test taker prior to going in would actually check off what applies to them and then go in and only do those portions of the test. So that this way we're not making new tests for each individual person. It's more you have the one big test and you list out prior to going in what is actually applicable to you and your lab, and you only get tested on those components. And so this kind of pilot test would be more for people that already have proficiency monitoring, proficiency testing in their own lab to kind of go in and critique it and give feedback moving forward. So that's kind of how we decided to pilot this one as the guinea pig test with people that are already used to proficiency monitoring. And then additionally, the TDII has also asked if we could, if you all could go in and host the testing there, kind of like you did with the pilot program. And then if yes, just kind of a checklist or guidance or something that people would need to have done prior to that day, so then they could just go in and do the test and already know that they meet everything else prior to going in and taking the test.
Question about the test part. Are you guys gonna do some form of test prep, like maybe an online or some sort of way to prepare them for the modules? Maybe would be good. Like if you have people who are gonna sit for it, maybe talk through like what each of them covers or whatever, and ask if they have questions they can ask about the test sections.
Yeah, and that's what they had asked me was, okay, if we do the test, what do we need to know ahead of time?
Right.
So that they would be able to put out that guidance to whoever wants to take the test.
Yeah, we have all the reading material available and everything, of course. But I'm wondering if we should do some form of test prep webinar or something like that.
Like for the big licensing test or for the PT test?
The licensing. I was just thinking about the different components, because you're saying the commission, I know we already said we would be there for folks to sit for the test. Sorry, I'm conflating PT and the licensing exam. But I wonder if we should.
Should I ask the TDII to maybe put something out and gauge interest and see exactly how many people would be willing to take the test? Or if people don't think they're ready, then maybe we do that the next year. So, I mean, I can ask maybe to put something out and see if we can get some numbers and go from there.
Yeah, because if people would feel, like if you think about the traditional disciplines that got licensed, those analysts, they know a lot of the terminology, they know what these areas are, they understand what it means. Looking at the syllabus, some of them may look at some sections and be like, that's not my favorite subject, or it's not a thing I deal with all, but they all know, like they know what root cause analysis is generally. They know what, the different things that we have. They've been prepped, mooted on courtroom testimony before as part of accreditation. They know all of it. They understand what human factors means. So, but I'm wondering for these folks if they might not benefit from some sort of little online, like here are all the subjects, here's what they cover generally, answering questions about what to expect a little bit.
I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, I think we need to get you on the audios to pick it up.
Good morning. When I was talking with Michelle, so I have a PowerPoint that's already built that in the beginning of that, it talks about what the exam looks like and what is required in that exam. So if we wanted to push something out that, to the TDII or to, people that would potentially, it's already built in there and I was going to cover it during the presentation. So that would be super easy just to attach that and get that to people ahead of time.
Yeah, because maybe if we send it to them, I don't know, we can talk about it, but I do think we'll have a presence, probably a significant presence there. We probably need to understand how many of the days it would help for us to be present. Because I don't know if you need us there the whole week, but we want to be there for the times that are most important. We certainly want to be there in case there are things that they put to you, Shelley, that you're like, I'm not sure about that. We can answer it right away. I think we should be there in at least two of us. We'll see which two. But it's great that you guys are doing this. It's really, really great. And I appreciate you teaching this like mini course.
Well, and Lynn, as you know, I mean, it was very well received when we presented it at the Crime Scene Reconstruction Conference. I presented it in Kansas City at the Bloodstain Conference. And it's got the attention of not only people in the state of Texas, but across the United States that are extremely interested in becoming licensed and how to do that and how to write their SOPs so that they are in compliance with what the commission is looking for. And tomorrow I'm giving a presentation before I leave town on the benefits of voluntary licensing for hopefully some stakeholders that really can facilitate change. So, as Michelle and I and Brittany Webb have been discussing, we feel like with this push to educate, the court system that hopefully this becomes a very popular option for all practitioners, not only in the state of Texas, but across the United States.
Appreciate that, thank you. I think it'll be fun to be, I always like going to TDII. It's a good meeting, people are, I'll be curious how many folks sign up for it, so.
Yeah.
Thanks, Shelley.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great, thank you for that update.
Do you have anything else, Michelle? Or?
No, I think that's pretty much it.
Okay, cool. Thanks so much for working on it. And
It's
please
been fun.
tell Brittany the same for us.
Okay, our next agenda item is to discuss the issue of lack of available accredited firearms expert and then possible resources for smaller laboratories to achieve accreditation in firearms.
So this has been kind of a recurring theme. And a couple things that we did is, I asked Lee to check out what resources are available for smaller forensic science service providers to achieve accreditation. There are resources out there, but they're all for publicly funded entities. So a smaller private lab is not eligible for what we're seeing out there as funding sources that the government makes available at the federal level. That could change, but for right now, it's only, city, county, state labs. So I went to the ANAB assessor development program that they do every year, and they wanted me to speak to the lead assessors, which was a fabulous, incredibly productive experience. And one of the things that I talked to ANAB about was this subject. And the response I got from them was, we are not aware of any funds for private labs to achieve accreditation. I think both they and A2LA try to help make it cost effective, but their suggestion was, why don't the public defender's offices have accredited labs? Because then they could foot the bill for the accreditation piece and they would be eligible for this money. And they would have a firearms examiner, and it doesn't necessarily mean that the firearms examiner would only work for that PDO. They could be fee for service, but at least there's like a connection with a public entity that is funded at the county, typically the county level in Texas. Though we do have some, they're mostly county PDOs. So we don't really have a great update. There's not funds available, but I'm going to talk to TIDC, which is one of our sister agencies at OCA, about whether they've talked about this before. That's the Texas Indigent Defense Commission. Their job is they support the public defender's offices that exist in the state. They support the managed assigned counsel programs that exist in the state. So they are sort of the authority over all indigent defense. And they give out a lot of money for indigent defense. That's the main thing they do, is fund all these entities. So I'm going to talk to them and see what they think. It doesn't mean that they have to stand up maybe it's daunting to think about, because like, really, we're going to stand up a DNA lab and a tox lab, but for things like firearms, which is probably more cost effective. I mean, setting aside the 3D microscopy cost, but for your regular firearms lab, the capital costs are probably going to be less than they would if you stood up a seized drug section or a DNA section or whatever. So we're going to talk to them about that. But right now we don't have great answers on how to help private labs that offer an alternative for firearms analysis for the defense become accredited using public funds. We looked at a bunch of grants and it's like, you're not eligible. I mean, just the description of eligibility does not matter. Does anybody have any questions about that?
You said that was the Texas Indigent Defense
Commission. So they are a sister agency of ours, but they fund the public defenders. They fund the managed assigned counsel, which is like the managed assigned counsel, for example, in Austin, there's one where, there are people who, it's not a PDO in the sense that the lawyers are still in private practice, but they are part of a group of people who do indigent defense using the money from the managed assigned counsel. They're just not like employees of a public defender's office. They're private. But they're assigned to represent folks under this management structure. They're called MACs. So I assume you guys are okay with me talking with them to see what the options might be. I mean, it is in the service of the public interest.
It's a great idea.
It's just, I don't know if
That never occurred to me.
that's what Ana suggested, and I was like, wow, Ana,
Yeah.
with the thinking outside the box. I mean, I think that these probably exist to some extent in other states. Maybe he's seen it before, and that's why. So I will reach out to TIDC and talk to them about that. I don't have any other good news on that subject, though.
Excellent. Our next agenda item is to discuss and vote on recommended rule changes, including but not limited to amendments to 651.222, voluntary licensure, forensic analyst, and forensic technician licensing requirements, to qualify versions of the required Texas Commission on Law Enforcement, or TCOL, course number 2106, Intermediate Crime Scene Search, taught by TCOL certified instructors that were revised or established prior to 2019.
Yeah, so this is a rulemaking proposal to essentially expand the qualified courses for the TCOL course number 2106. In our current rules, we only qualify the 2019 version, and obviously there's folks that are applying that have taken versions before. So I consulted with members of this committee and also Shelley Rossi on whether that would be acceptable, and we collaborated in drafting this rule proposal. And came to the conclusion that it would be acceptable, as long as taught by a TCOL certified instructor. There are some, from what I understand, and Shelley might be able to provide more of an explanation, or perhaps Karina, there are some TCOL 2106 titled courses that are offered by an in-house laboratory training program that aren't necessarily taught by TCOL certified instructors, and I don't think we want to count those, so this rulemaking carves out those from qualifying. Cassie, did you have anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like those courses that are called 2106 are sort of taking the 2106 curriculum and offering it internally, but I think the thought process was that's fine if the instructor is certified by TCOL to do it. Is that what you had said? Can you elaborate on that for us, Shelley, a little bit? Because I guess sometimes there are TCOL 2106 type courses that aren't exactly, TCOL doesn't know that the person is not certified to instruct the course because they wouldn't have any way to know that, because for civilians it's not like what they're checking. They're only checking for folks who are peace officers and need the recognition of the credit. Then they will know whether the person's certified, but for lay people, you know.
Correct. And a lot of times the person that is instructing is covered by the umbrella of the agency in which is a TCOL licensed agency. And so they bring in instructors that maybe are not TCOL licensed instructors to teach the curriculum. And if you are a civilian, that course is not necessarily reported to TCOL, like it doesn't show up anywhere. And the certificate that's issued by the training provider does not come from TCOL, it comes from the agency in which you take the training. And so it could say Intermediate Crime Scene Search, course. And before the 2019 revision, it was a 32-hour course. Now it's a 40-hour course. And then it has usually an academy director's signature on it, and then whoever the instructor is. But we have no way to, if they're a civilian instructor, then they're not going to show up. And so we just wanted to kind of put into the rule that if you were going to have that course, that we wanted to make sure that it was taught by someone that was an actual TCOL instructor and actually the 2106 curriculum.
And 2106 taught by TCOL instructors is widely available for folks. Is that a fair statement?
Oh, it's being taught probably every single week across the state of Texas.
And
by
certified instructors.
And that we don't know. I mean, you don't know. I mean, I would assume that, or it's by somebody under an academy umbrella.
So I just want to make sure there aren't any unintended consequences with this. So for example, if an agency has taught 2106 intermediate, and let's just say it's a great course and it's really robust, but the teacher didn't happen to have the TCOL certification,
So our agency puts it on and hosts it, and they do make sure that the person teaching it is a TCOL certified instructor, but that instructor wasn't gonna be available one time. And so the academy had said, well, if somebody needs to teach it this one time, as long as they're following the same syllabus, it would be covered under the umbrella. And so it would still get the credit. It didn't end up happening, they didn't end up putting on the course that time, they ended up waiting and pushing it back so they could have the proper instructor, but that's an example of one of those times that the people attending that course, those officers would have still gotten the same credit for their TCOL immediate or intermediate instructor course or privacy course that they needed.
TCOL told them they would get it, or
It's
they,
my understanding that they still
oh,
would
they
have,
did, that's
yeah.
interesting.
Right, because if you are teaching at a TCOL licensed facility, like Montgomery County, like what Michelle was talking about. So Montgomery County is a TCOL provider. So you could have somebody, you could have a 6-month brand new crime scene investigator that you get into a bind where the person that normally teaches it gets sick, and they pull in the brand new crime scene person. They're like, here's the curriculum, here's the slides, knock your lights out, right? Then what is the quality of the instruction that they're getting? And so by at least having that class taught by a TCOL instructor, then at least they have independently been through the 40-hour TCOL instructor course.
Can
Yes.
I actually teach the class, and I'm not an instructor, but TCOL don't allow you to teach it if you're a subject matter expert. So for TCOL to recognize the class, you have to submit the class rosters, your outline, all that, and then you have to submit your instructor bio with it, with either checking the box as an instructor or a subject matter expert. And then if you're a subject matter expert, you've got to list how and why you're a subject matter expert. So I would recommend to include that as well, because if TCOL is going to recognize the course, you've got to submit an instructor bio with your packet to TCOL to get credit. So a subject matter expert, I believe, should also count
One that
as a certified instructor for purpose of this.
Okay, so in that scenario, you're teaching to law enforcement of agents who need TCOL to say yes to this course in order to get it recognized for what they need.
Yes.
So in that circumstance, TCOL has blessed the course that you're teaching.
Yes.
I wonder what happens if the only people taking the course are civilians who will never need TCOL to bless the course because they're not getting credit. How do we make sure that those ones are taught by good people? I guess it's, you get,
I
you
would
follow.
recommend the instructor bio, have them submit, whatever classes they take, they need to submit the instructor's bio probably with their documentation to take the class, to show that the instructor is either certified as an instructor or they're a subject matter expert and qualified to teach the class.
And they would submit that to us because they don't have to submit it to TCOL? Or can they get it approved by TCOL even though none of their people need the TCOL credit?
When it comes to civilians, like I recently looked up my TCOL record just out of curiosity. I've taken a lot of TCOL classes. The only thing on my TCOL record is my certified instructor TCOL course. All the other courses that I've taken TCOL, because I'm a civilian, they don't have record of any of it. My agency, however, myself, I have record of all that, so I would have to pull my own records or our agency records to be able to get it and find out, okay, which course did I take, who taught it and all that. Like that would be, the onus would be on us as individuals or our agency if we keep up with that. So civilians in this would have a harder time, depending how far back we're going, finding those records.
And my concern for the purposes of licensing through the commission is that there is a civilian crime scene person in a place that doesn't have accessibility to Brent or the rangers or a subject matter expert who knows a guy who knows a guy that has a little bit of knowledge in crime scene and is like, here, I will give you crime scene search training, and then gives them a certificate so that it can comply with licensing. And so I like Brent's idea of it would be something that would need to be, because TCOL's not gonna care, right? That they're not keeping track for civilians. Who's gonna care is this commission and the licensing requirement.
So in order to address what you're saying, it would be the vote or the rule making would include recognition of 2106 taught by either TCOL certified instructors or a subject matter expert approved by the commission, basically, because they're not going to be approved by TCOL.
Yeah, because I'll add this, just because you're a TCOL certified instructor, doesn't mean you're qualified to teach that class. If you're a subject matter expert on any of that, to teach that class, just because you hold that instructor certificate. That's just my opinion. That doesn't qualify you to be a subject matter expert to teach that class.
I think the only way to carve it out is to have each individual program be approved by the commission.
So would that, I mean, is that what, in light of what you're saying, that the TCOL instructor certification doesn't guarantee subject matter expertise?
No, because the course is just whether or not you can teach and follow a syllabus and everything. So I'm a TCOL certified instructor. They don't say whether I should be teaching firearms or crime scene or DNA or what I teach.
So should we ask anyone who wants a pre-2019 TCOL 2106 course to submit their resume or whatever CV to us?
I think it has to be 2019 and the previous ones, right?
Yeah, the only difference I think in the previous one was there was no mock crime scene component. They added that in 19. That's what bumped it to the 40 hours. They added the mock crime scene component to the class in 19. Anything prior to that you wouldn't have the mock crime scene component.
In other words, I don't think we have to distinguish between any of them. We just have to individually review every single one, even if it's 2019 later.
Unless there's something about the addition of the practical element that you think makes it so the only people who would teach that would be subject matter experts. But I don't know, not necessarily, or.
I'm also thinking that if somebody took one of the prior ones, from a long time ago, my concern would be what have they done currently to make sure they have something current to be able to.
Well, that'll be all the rest of the licensing requirements. Would show that they know what they're doing in whatever category of licensure they're applying for. But I guess.
Remember all the training, there's like 220 hours of required training in the area of crime scene, and then the work experience requirements, even for the lower levels of crime scene licensure in particular.
So for 2106, then, do we ask for instructor CVs for all 2106 courses?
That might be hard to get depending on the
and most of the time, because of like what Lee just said, when you get to the bigger, like the crime scene investigation license, they've got 220 additional courses, plus they've got a work history. When you get to crime scene reconstruction, you've got 440 hours plus 5 years experience. So 2106 becomes a little less impactful as it does for these entry-level licenses, where we added the requirement for 2106 for the basic level technician. And so I would recommend that if you are seeking the entry-level crime scene technician, or where the only requirement is 2106, that the commission looks at who who that class is being taught by, because that's the only thing that they have to grade. With the other stuff, I mean, they've got years and, weeks and weeks and weeks of training. So it's just that entry level where if we are gonna license them with only 40 hours of training, then we should make sure that the 40 hours of training they got is by someone qualified to teach.
So the only thing is that would set up a discrepancy between what we were asked for one category versus the other ones. I mean, we could do it that way. How do you all feel about that?
The only category of crime scene licensure that Shelley's mentioning that only requires a TCOL course without the hours of training is the crime scene processing technician category.
So we
what
could
would be the difference between the technician and the analyst license?
That would be the difference, is you'd want to see, make sure that the course was taught by a subject matter expert, irrespective of whether they are certified by TCOL, it sounds like, based on what we're hearing. I just don't know how.
I'm just saying that needs to be an option. I don't think you should exclude somebody that's not a TCOL instructor that may be a subject matter expert in that field is more than qualified to teach the class over somebody that is an instructor, but is not qualified. So I'm just saying there ought to be that option.
Okay, so one way to write it is just to add, so it would be that the version of the TCOL course number 2106 Intermediate Crime Scene Search taught by TCOL certified instructor or a subject matter expert approved by the commission. That gives people who can't establish the TCOL instructor part a way to get the course recognized.
Well, and I would hope that if an agency is sponsoring an instructor under their umbrella, that the person that they are putting on the podium is a subject matter expert in crime scene search, right? Because that's how it's titled, it's crime scene search. So like for the Plano Police Department, the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office, that the person that they're bringing into their training academy that is training outside students, that they are an expert in their field. So it's just this, when Michelle and I were talking, it's this in-house training where I'll teach you what I know, and then I'm gonna write you a certificate that I've trained you for 40 hours without knowing, if I'm qualified to teach you or not.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of up to the agency to vet the instructor. Because I mean, it could happen, but I can't imagine seeing it happen very often where you're gonna have only a 2106 class with all so many people. I mean, it could happen, but there's so many commissioned officers that have to, everybody has to have that if you're commissioned, so they're constantly putting them on for commissioned officers. So you're gonna see more commission with probably civilian trickling in to get it free officer requirements. So the instructor should be already vetted by the agency that's putting that class on. Through that instructor bio, they have to submit it to show that they're either a TCOL instructor or they're a subject matter expert to teach the class.
But TCOL, I think what I find curious about it is TCOL does not evaluate for its certified instructors whether they don't ask for the same subject matter expertise to be demonstrated. You're certified to teach, and we assume your agency or the world is vetting whether you know what you're talking about or not.
In the instructor bio form, even if you're a certified instructor, you still have to list your qualifications to teach the class.
Okay.
Whether you're teaching under the subject matter expert umbrella or the instructor umbrella, you still have to list your qualifications.
Okay.
Which
So
should,
in
the perfect world, be vetted by the agency that you're teaching for is put the class on.
Got it, okay.
Because that too's required to get the instructor bio from the instructor, gather all the required documents and submit it to TCOL.
Okay, so it sounds like if we do this add this, or a subject matter expert, or a subject matter expert approved by the commission, it'll cover what we need. So that would be, I think, the motion. And if you look at, and we can make that change pretty easily if that's what you ultimately decide to recommend to the commission.
Would you be creating a standard for how you're assessing subject matter expertise, so people will be aware of what that
We should.
will look like?
We should at least have the information available on the website for sure. And we'll just have Brent write it up for it.
Is there any other comment on this topic before I ask for a motion? Okay. So is there a motion to recommend the commission propose changes to the rules discussed, including the addition of a subject matter expert approved by the commission, subject to other suggested non-substantive revisions from the Office of the Governor and Texas Register and Commission staff?
So moved.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries. And that'll bring us to agenda item 9, which is to discuss the FBI rule change announced during the January 13th, 2024 National Rapid DNA webinar, including Texas impact, and possibly vote on a recommendation for the commission to create a state working group for the purpose of recommending criteria for rapid DNA licensing program.
Okay, so what's happening is that you may recall that rapid DNA is a technology that's been in the forensic space for some time now. The commission has talked about it on and off. Over time, there was a bit of a bumpy start with some of the vendors because I think the technology itself, everyone understands, is very sound technology. It's not really substantively all that different from what's being run in the labs right now. And some of our labs have rapid instruments right now as we're sitting here. The question was always how and when and under what conditions would we allow law enforcement officers to run these DNA samples through these instruments that as the name implies, produce results more rapidly than the process that you get typically in the lab. Now, the rapid DNA instruments have tremendous promise for solving crime. They also have limitations, like all technologies. So the FBI, for some time, the FBI has authority over the CODIS database, and then at each level down from there, we have a state database in Texas called ESTIS that DPS is in charge of making sure all those rules are followed. And then at each forensic science service provider that has CODIS access, they have ELDIS, which is their local database. So there are these tiers of databasing. The FBI, of course, understandably, is very protective of the integrity of that database. They're concerned to make sure it stays intact. So for a long time, their position was that the most appropriate use for the rapid technology was to take knowns at booking stations from arrestees. And that arrestee legislation has been adopted at different times in different states. We have arrestee swab programs. I know there's one in Williamson County. I'm not sure how many counties we have those in, but essentially you take a buccal and that is what's used to establish the profiles in the database. Now we're in a whole new world with rapid because the FBI announced a couple weeks ago that they are going to allow crime scene samples to be run through the Rapid instrument and search in CODIS. If those agencies that are doing this work partner with a laboratory that is accredited. So, and the work of the rapid units that are going to be stood up, the little rapid, I think kiosk is not the word I'm looking for, a little mini lab, rapid units, the work of that unit, wherever it might be, is going to be encompassed within the accreditation of those partner agencies. So it's a fairly significant project and risk that the labs will be taking on. So we talked to AAB last week, and we've been in talks with DPS. Now, meanwhile, for a couple of years, the FBI has been piloting what it looks like for law enforcement agents to run crime scene samples through the rapid instruments, and have been developing, I think, their policy priorities on how it will look once it goes live. And now they're saying they are comfortable as long as we have this partnership structure. So the law in Texas is that an expert examination or test on evidence, on essentially from a crime scene, for the purpose of connecting it to a criminal action, and this expressly includes DNA evidence, has to be accredited. And then if you're going to perform forensic analysis on behalf of a court or a crime laboratory, the work you're doing has to be licensed. The legislature has exempted certain forensic fields from licensure. They haven't amended those in a while, but some of those include breath alcohol, friction ridge, digital. And so right now, what we're faced with is a scenario in which a lot of work is going to have to be done to really flesh out the interface between the labs and the law enforcement agencies, to flesh out what that partnership looks like from a quality management perspective, who's responsible for what. I had a lengthy conversation with the leadership at ANAB in San Antonio last week, where they were talking about what their concerns are, and what they expressed was that, you know, they're actually not as concerned about things like documenting nonconformities, because once you educate everybody on what needs to be documented, it's just a matter of, oh, you know, I dropped these swabs, or whatever the issue may come up, and they'll know that they need to alert somebody, and then they'll write up the QI, and it'll take some getting used to, but that's relatively straightforward. There are some real questions logistically, though, about chain of custody for the evidence. Because if it's coming from the crime scene into this unit, like, where does it get stored? How does it get stored? All of that. So I think, so what the FBI recommended in this webinar/infomercial, if you watch it, you'll see what I mean by that, is that every state develop a working group to address these issues internally in a way that makes sense for the state. So this is on the agenda for tomorrow, but just initial conversations with Texas DPS and with the TACLID, Peter Stout, of course, a representative of that, is there's tremendous promise in this technology. And law enforcement is eager to use it. And there are some agencies in the state that have already been awarded money to stand up these instruments. And they thankfully have reached out to DPS and to the lab asking, like, okay, so they gave us this money to buy this thing, now what? You know, kind of questions. So we have been talking about what a rapid DNA operator license would look like, and the fact that you'd sort of need to create something from scratch to fulfill that need. And it may not look anything like, or it'll look to some degree like the other licensing programs, because you have to have proficiency testing. I mean, the FBI has been clear on that. You have to have, there are certain things that you need, that you will absolutely have to do. If you want to access CODIS, if you don't care about CODIS, that's a different set of questions. If you have a small pond database or something that you want to stand up, that's a different thing. But if you want to access CODIS, the FBI is pretty clear on what needs to be in place. So we were thinking that we should stand up a working group like the FBI has recommended. I mean, DPS has its own internal one that's been going for a while, but a broader one, because we're thinking about the fact that, like, for example, 2 really great candidates for this, Plano PD and Montgomery County Sheriff.
We've been there.
You already have one, or, I'm sorry.
We did, there was a 6-year point where I was not in Plano before I came back to Plano. You'd have to talk to Bill Worski more about it. He's very familiar with it. I know we got a rapid DNA, we were validating it. I don't want to misspeak because I wasn't there, so I don't know the logistics, but we don't have it anymore.
Okay.
There was a lot of money put into the program, and I don't know the legal, I don't know all the what happened. But Bill Worski could definitely fill you in
I'm sure
on
he
that.
could, and I'll reach out to him for sure. I think, though, it's like a whole new world now, right? Because we're all supposed to be rowing the boat in the same direction.
Yes.
So sometimes early adopters pay the price for early adoption, unfortunately, like when the infrastructure and the systems aren't quite in place or ready yet, and they put the hard brakes on it. The FBI was not willing to do this until now. And I mean, it's still not in place yet, but it's coming online. Spring or summer, I don't know if you have more information, Megan, but I think it's coming on, or Eric or anybody, but it's the next 6 months, I think.
July 1st of 2025.
Yeah, July. So
I would say that there's a couple other things that have to happen before people can actually do it. The ENDIS operational procedures have to change. The laboratories would have to develop the program and then expand their accreditation to whatever sites. You have to get funding. These are incredibly expensive instruments. So unless someone has one right now, I don't see anyone being like, July 1st, we want to go. DPS certainly wouldn't be ready, I don't think, at that point to bring them in to the accreditation. So I think we have time.
it will be a process, but there's definitely an eagerness in the community to get it going. I think, for example, the Sheriff's Office in Amarillo has a grant to do this work. They have been, to my understanding, talking with DPS, really great about working with them on how it might go. They're not like full steam ahead. They're just wanting to, I think, explore it in the most cautious way that they can. But there are definitely options and opportunities, but it's going to take some time. So I think the best thing that we can do is develop this group that works together on it. And so one of the things we wanted to talk about, and the reason why this is on the agenda, is, if you all want to make a recommendation to the commission about establishing this group and who might be in it. So let me just run down some of the likely candidates. So the Sheriff's Association, the police chiefs, the Rangers, a representative from the Rangers, TCDLA, TDCAA, TACLID, TAFQUAM, ANAB wants to be on it, which is great. And someone, I think, from the LAC needs to be on it, for sure, this group. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and I'm thinking, who am I forgetting?
Defense
I said TCDLA.
Oh, I understand.
Yeah. And then ANAB, TAPQUIM, TACLID, sheriffs, police, rangers, LAC, ANAB. I feel like I might be forgetting someone, but is there anybody else y'all can think of? Because I don't know what the will be, like at your agency, to bring this back online again, but it's definitely the case that since you have ISO accreditation, you would still need to partner to some extent for the CODIS access, but you're already accredited to 17020. So the rapid DNA is going to be a separate thing on the scope. That became very clear to me last week. It's a separate thing. And for those like the CHI who have it sort of wrapped up in their scope within like STR typing using CE, it's actually going to be a separate thing, rapid DNA. So ANAB's working on that right now. But, yes, sir.
May I ask a question?
Of course.
So, and I apologize for my ignorance along these lines, but I'll look at our laboratory as an example of how this could occur, and I wonder, what does that look like when you have an agency that wants to partner with an accredited laboratory who's accredited under 17020? This would essentially be an additional element, as you stated, that may fall under 17025, correct? And what if that agency that is accredited does not have someone in that line of expertise within DNA?
Yeah, so the rapid DNA operators are going to be trained to be rapid DNA operators. So any agency that is currently accredited or not accredited, if they're willing to go through the ANAB accreditation process and bring rapid online, they will be able to do that if they meet the requirements of 020 or 025, just to be clear. The question is, do you want to have your instrument sitting there with a small pond database that just has whatever you can gather, or do you want, I mean, if you're going to spend that much money, presumably you want access to CODIS. That's the whole purpose, right? So for that CODIS piece is where the partnership will come in. My guess is it's going to be a heck of a lot easier for ANAB to handle a partnership between 17020 and 17025 with CODIS under that umbrella than it would be for them to go from nothing at whatever sheriff's office or PD to partnership with 17025 CODIS lab. Does that make sense? I mean, you already have the infrastructure in place. You already know so many more things. You've been through the process, you're assessed, you're all that. So really the bridge is just to CODIS for you guys.
And can I just provide a little bit more information? Right now, the only thing that they're allowing is what they're calling modified rapid DNA analysis, which is where a technically trained, qualified DNA analyst has to review the profile before it goes in. So if an instrument is in a PD or wherever it might sit, the operator is literally just swab in, push a button, running it. They have to PT how they do that, but they're not analyzing it, and those profiles aren't going directly in. It would go to the accredited lab who is encompassing that accreditation and taking ownership effectively of that unit, review it, and then it goes into CODIS. That's the first step. In the future, it might get to where you don't have that intermediary, and that would be true rapid DNA analysis, but so far in the QAS, they've granted modified only. So you wouldn't have to worry about qualifying the person who's actually running it in DNA interpretation or anything like that.
So any results would come from the lab, not the operators per se.
Yes. From what I understand, they know that this operator could be a PD person who has no training in any science, and they've built the instruments to work with that. So it's literally swab in, push a button. They have to run, I think, quality control. We have like someone studying that right now, but the analysis would not be done by that person.
And so for that piece of it, you would need the partnership with your CODIS lab. But you all, I feel like, could stand up a rapid instrument a lot faster, a lot more easily, because of your status as a ANA lab already, even though it's under different, it's under 020 and not 025. Same thing for Montgomery County. Same thing for Harris County. And all our other labs out there that are already within the umbrella. Harris County Sheriff, I mean.
It just occurs to me, Lynn, that we need to add to our scope of recognized accreditations, this new accreditation from our database. We don't have that little checkbox there.
Yeah. Rapid DNA. So you could have Friction Ridge Firearms Rapid DNA is where we're going. If you want CODIS, you partner with a CODIS lab for the last mile, essentially, that Megan just described. It's a similar relationship in many respects that CODIS labs have with outsourcing labs right now that are private labs that aren't CODIS labs. I mean, it's a little bit different, but it's a similar concept. Like, they will have to take ownership for that last piece.
I would really like to see the commission encourage, if you are gonna have a rapid, to be in this structure. Because I think the concern of the individual small pond is you're not contributing to the overall the solutions that CODIS was meant to be, which is helping solve other unsolved crimes. So it just makes more sense now that this is available to work with the FBI's rules and to be connected to CODIS rather than individual databases.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of small ponds in other states. There's some pretty astounding small ponds in other states. There's one that a single DA maintains in Massachusetts, which is sort of came as a surprise to all of us. But I think in Texas, people understand the benefits and the power of CODIS. Like, that is what we're all trying to do, is to contribute to that, like you say, Megan. I don't know of any small pond databases in Texas. Do you, Eric? I haven't heard of any.
Not off the top of my head, no. But labs utilize that kind of software for elimination database purposes, and so it wouldn't surprise me if somebody had one. But it would be typically a CODIS laboratory that had a small pond for a separate reason. It's not It's not replacing CODIS.
Like a quality elimination type small pond is a totally different thing to me. Like,
yeah. The only thing I heard of, and I may be totally off base because it was just in passing, that one of the vendors was marketing this in the Houston area and was actually asking for samples from sexual assault victims to make their own database. That's the only thing I've heard.
So that came before the commission, and we ended up sort of writing a letter about how that did not seem like a good practice.
Yeah.
That was a big deal back a few years ago, which is why I think a number of why there was some hesitancy, because what we saw in that specific example was an agency that was getting pressure from a vendor that ran some cases through the instrument, exhausted the entire sample from the scene, and when the lab went to call it back because the prosecutor's office wanted more testing, it was gone. It had been used, there was a full profile developed, but they couldn't do anything with it because FBI wouldn't allow it to be searched in CODIS, so that meant they were out of luck. And that is not, I think that's what, that plus taking 2 sexual assault kids and sending them off to another state without getting actual consent, real consent from the people who were coming in to get the exam done was very concerning to us. Sending them off to another state with FedEx losing a couple of them. Like, those are the things that we were coming into knowledge of, and so that's why we were sort of like cautioning the vendor about that whole process. But having said all of that, that's sort of in the rear view mirror now, we hope, and I think the FBI, having heard of those types of things, that's why they've structured it the way that they have. With the partnering arrangement and all that.
I think the only other piece I'll mention just for educational is right now the recommendation is that not all sample types are appropriate for this technology. There would be an education piece on what this would be good for and what wouldn't. Mixtures coming out of rapid instruments are much more difficult to interpret than from traditional laboratory technology, and so the publications from this pilot study that Lynn was talking about when they were actually running crime scene samples through, is the language is being extremely cautious with mixtures and extensive validation would be needed. So that's a piece of working towards the future, is education on what samples are great and would be helpful, and then what samples should really still go to your lab.
Yeah, I think some of those messy mixtures, or just mixtures, period, they're just gonna need to be looked at by a DNA analyst who knows what they're looking at.
Well, in this talk also, I listened in, it still said you take your sample for the lab and you take your sample for your rapid DNA machine.
And you hope the one you took for the lab is the one that has the,
Right.
the, you know, but you don't have magic glasses,
No.
so you actually can't. You can make educated evidence collection is the best that you really can do. Okay, so I think if we're gonna move forward, we would definitely need an LAC rep at the table for this conversation, for sure. So.
Feels like I'm being voluntold, but now I'd be happy to participate.
Okay. Great. And then, is everyone okay with recommending, this would be the list, Sheriff's Association, Police Chiefs Association, Texas Rangers, TCDLA, TDCAA, TACLID, TAFQAM, ANAB, and Megan. Yes, sir.
What about DPS Crime Lab, since they're maybe the umbrella agency, would they like to see a benefit for the DPS Crime Lab?
Okay, we can do DPS Crime Lab.
Helps I work for DPS.
Yeah, she works for the DPS Crime Lab.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, so she covers both of those, but I mean, we could see if we want to have another person from DPS too. 1, 2.
Maybe someone, right, maybe someone from CODIS rep.
That might be who DPS sends, would be the code, I'm not sure what they'll do.
With this being more focused on the forensic aspect, I don't know that this is only going through Gary Molina, who's our state administrator. If we move into the booking discussion, he definitely would be the one to talk to. But we have a couple people focused on researching this technology that I'm assuming they may want in this conversation. But I'm also happy to service that if that's what they want.
Okay. So I think what you could also do is just have the motion be, with the following groups, and then the commission can do with it what they're gonna, if they wanna revise it to have other people, they can. I mean, it's fine. Does anybody have any objection to any of these folks? The sheriffs, the police chiefs, the rangers, the defense, the prosecutors, the lab directors, the quality managers, ANAB, and LAC. I didn't put A2LA on there, not because I want to exclude them, but just because they don't have any, they have accredited DNA programs in Texas, but no CODIS ones. I mean, I guess we could include them for the non-CODIS ones in case they want to try to partner with a CODIS lab, but I feel like that's already done through outsourcing, so I'm not sure.
Unless we want it faster.
I mean, I guess we could add A2LA in case, just in case. But right now, none of the labs that would serve as the partner are A2LA labs.
Right, is there anything else on this? Is there a motion to recommend that the commission establish a statewide working group with members that been mentioned, and open to other members that might be added later at their discretion for the purpose of recommending criteria for a rapid DNA licensing program?
So moved.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Next, we'll hear an update from the Texas Association of Crime Laboratory Directors.
Peter's not here. I don't know if they are meeting right after this meeting, so my guess is he's on the road to here. Do you all have anything? I think today's meeting will be pretty significant because they meet twice a year, and we just have a legislative session that kicked off, so there'll be a lot on that agenda for those who are staying. And it will be in this room.
Okay, now we'll consider proposed agenda items for the next quarterly committee meeting.
So one of them is going to be that QAS item that we talked about.
Are there any other matters that a committee member wishes to direct staff to place on the next committee agenda? Next, we'll schedule and decide the location of future licensing advisory committee meetings, including but not limited to scheduled meetings for April 10th, 2025, July 24th, 2025, and October 23rd, 2025 meetings. Is there a motion to direct staff to schedule these meetings?
So.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, that'll bring us to the public comment.
Okay, before we do that, I think since our attorneys are not on the call, my guess is they got caught up, so we could do the motion to excuse them.
Okay. So is there a motion to excuse Jessica Frazier and Angelica Cagliano from the meeting? All right, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those opposed? I'm sorry, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, the members are excused. And then this is the public comment section. I don't know if anybody signed up to speak publicly.
Did you want to say anything about the staff course, Shelley?
I can, just real quick.
Can you go up to the thing, I'm sorry.
Just real quick, the pilot class was supposed to go in January, and because that was something that had to go through the university, it wasn't able to stand up, for that break between the fall and spring semester. So it is on track to launch the second week of July, which will be the 21st through the 25th. It is through their continuing education. It turned out to be a 48-hour course, and how they charge for continuing education courses is at $16 per contract hour, which 16 times 48 is $768 plus the book, which is going to bring the course to approximately $900. It will be taught at Lone Star College at University Park, which is on 249 on the north side of Houston. There is a hotel that is adjacent to the university, and it will be within steps to the training center. And so that information, they are working out internally how they're going to take payment from individual contractors such as police department, sheriff's offices, the state. And so that's currently what they're in the process of working out is to set those people up as vendors and then bill for payment. So it will be, like I said, the second week, 21st through the 25th for 48 hours, which is the 3 credit units.
Do you have a sense of how many people will sign up for it yet, or we don't?
I had a list of 10 that kind of got on the early list. I think that we will have a pretty good feel after if we send out the kind of pre-training for who's interested in sitting for the licensing test at TDII, which will be the month before. And then may have their sights on needing this statistics component. So I think all of this is kind of coming together pretty nicely on timing.
Okay, thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No.
Thank you.